I guess you could say I'm just a regular guy with a regular life. My name is David, and I've been married to Rachel for a little over a year now. To be honest, I still feel like the luckiest man alive every time I wake up and see her beside me. She's smart, kind, beautiful, and the kind of person who makes everything around her feel lighter, like the world is just easier when she's in it. From the moment we met, she had this way of making me feel like I could do anything, and when we said our vows, I meant every single word. I run a small car parts business that keeps me busy, but not overly so. It's just enough to make me feel like I'm doing something meaningful, while still giving me plenty of time to spend with Rachel. She works from home as a financial analyst, a fancy way of saying she's really good with numbers. Honestly, I don't understand half of what she does, but it's impressive. She's the kind of person who could probably balance the country's budget while sipping her morning coffee. Life has been good to us. We've fallen into this comfortable rhythm where everything just clicks. We wake up, share breakfast, and then dive into our respective days. Evenings are my favorite, though. We cook together. Well, Rachel cooks and I pretend to help, and then we either watch something on TV or sit on the patio, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes we laugh until our sides hurt. Other times, we just enjoy the quiet. Now, I'd be lying if I said there weren't any challenges. Marriage isn't some fairy tale where everything is always perfect, and we're no exception. We've had our disagreements, who doesn't? But we've always managed to work through them. What's different about Rachel and me, though, is how much we value each other. We don't let petty arguments linger. We talk things out, even if it's uncomfortable. One of the more interesting parts of being married to Rachel is navigating her social circle. Don't get me wrong. I like that she has her own group of friends. They're important to her, and by extension, they're important to me. But if I'm being completely honest, her friends can be a bit much. They're a tight-knit group, and I always feel like the outsider looking in when we're together. They've known Rachel for years, and I'm just the husband. There's one friend in particular who stands out, Lisa. She's the ringleader, the one who sets the tone for the group. If Lisa's in a good mood, everyone's laughing and having a great time. If she's not, the entire dynamic shifts, and the evening feels like walking on eggshells. She's got this air about her, like she's always in control, always one step ahead of everyone else. It's not that she's outright mean. Well, not at first. But there's a subtlety to her that makes you feel like you're being judged, even when she's smiling at you. Despite the occasional tension, I've tried my best to fit in. I know how much Rachel values her friendships, and I don't want to be the reason she feels torn. So, I show up at the dinners, the brunches, the gatherings. I smile, I make small talk, and I laugh at jokes that aren't all that funny. It's not always easy, but for Rachel, it's worth it. At least that's what I thought. Looking back, maybe I should have trusted my instincts a bit more. Maybe I should have paid closer attention to the subtle ways Lisa would test the waters, the little digs disguised as compliments, the way she'd dominate conversations and steer them in directions that left me feeling like an afterthought. But at the time, I shrugged it off. I told myself it didn't matter because Rachel and I were happy, and that's all that counted. If only I'd known what was coming. If only I'd seen the storm brewing on the horizon. They say hindsight is 20/20, and in this case, they're absolutely right. What started as a seemingly innocent dinner invitation would turn out to be a moment that tested everything. My patience, my pride, and my marriage. But I'll get to that soon enough. For now, just know this. Life was good. Better than good. It was the kind of life you don't want to take for granted, the kind of life you fight to protect. And that's exactly what I was about to do, even if I didn't realize it yet. I remember the day Rachel mentioned the dinner like it was yesterday. It was a typical Tuesday evening, one of those quiet nights when nothing out of the ordinary was expected. I had just come home from work, exhausted but content, and Rachel was in the kitchen prepping a salad while humming along to some pop song playing on the radio. It was one of those moments that made me appreciate how simple and wonderful life could be. "Hey, David," she said, her voice light and casual. "Lisa and the girls are organizing a dinner at Lobby this Friday. You know, that fancy French place downtown? They said we should come." I paused, the TV remote halfway to my hand. "We?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. Usually, Rachel's group outings didn't involve me unless it was a major event like a birthday or an anniversary party. Yes, she replied, laughing at my expression. Apparently, Lisa insisted. She said it's been a while since you joined us, and she thought it would be nice for you to spend some time with the group. You've been working so hard lately. You deserve a nice evening out. There it was, the first red flag. Lisa insisting on my presence? That didn't sit right with me. Lisa wasn't exactly known for her inclusive attitude, especially when it came to me. She'd always been polite enough, but I could tell she didn't think much of me. I didn't come from the same privileged background as most of Rachel's friends, and while Rachel never cared about that, Lisa's subtle comments over the years had made her feelings crystal clear. Still, I didn't want to make a fuss. Sure, I said, shrugging. Why not? It might be nice to see everyone. Rachel smiled, clearly pleased. Great. It's at 7 p.m. Oh, and Lisa mentioned it's going to be a little more formal than usual, so maybe wear your navy suit. You know, the one that makes you look like a movie star. I laughed at her attempt to butter me up but agreed. The suit was fine, and honestly, the thought of Rachel beaming at me all night made the idea of the dinner a little less daunting. The rest of the week passed uneventfully, but I couldn't shake the strange feeling in the back of my mind. Something about the invitation didn't sit right. Maybe it was the way Rachel had casually dropped Lisa's name as if that alone was supposed to convince me, or maybe it was just my gut telling me that this night wasn't going to be as simple as it seemed. Friday arrived, and as we got ready, Rachel seemed genuinely excited. She picked out a stunning green dress that made her look radiant, and I couldn't help but feel proud to have her by my side. You're going to knock them dead, I said as we got into the car. She just smiled and squeezed my hand. We arrived at La Vie a little before 7 p.m. The restaurant was everything you'd expect from a high-end French establishment. Dim lighting, soft classical music playing in the background, and waiters who looked like they'd stepped out of a luxury magazine. Rachel's friends were already seated at a table near the center of the room, laughing and chatting like they owned the place. As we approached, I noticed something odd. The table was set for 8 people, and every seat was taken. I did a quick count to make sure I wasn't imagining things. Nope. 8 people, 8 seats. And Rachel and I made 10. Lisa spotted us and waved us over, her smile wide and full of something I couldn't quite place. David. Rachel. So glad you could make it, she called out. Rachel stepped forward, returning Lisa's hug while I lingered awkwardly behind. Lisa, I said, motioning to the table. I think there's been a mix-up. There's no seat for me. Lisa tilted her head, her smile never wavering. Oh, didn't Rachel tell you? We only reserved for 8. But don't worry. I'm sure the staff can bring over an extra chair for you. The way she said it, so casual, like I was an afterthought, sent a chill down my spine. Rachel looked flustered, glancing between me and Lisa as if trying to figure out how to fix the situation. I didn't realize, she stammered. I thought. Lisa cut her off. It's no big deal. David can sit on the end. Or, if it's easier, he can wait at the bar while we catch up. This is really more of a girl's thing anyway. There it was, the second red flag. I could feel my blood start to boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. I glanced at Rachel, hoping she'd step in and say something, anything, to defend me. But she just looked away, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Don't worry about it, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'll sort it out. I stepped away from the table, letting the humiliation sink in as I walked toward the bar. But as I took a seat and ordered a drink, one thought kept repeating in my mind. This wasn't just a mix-up. This was intentional, and I wasn't going to let it slide. Not this time. Let me tell you, sitting at the bar wasn't how I imagined that evening going. There I was, sipping a whiskey I didn't really want, while Rachel and her friends laughed and chatted a few feet away. From where I sat, I could see everything. The carefully laid table, the sparkling wine glasses, and of course, the 8 chairs filled with people who seemed perfectly content to pretend I didn't exist. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't angry. I was furious. But more than that, I was confused. What was the point of inviting me if there wasn't even a place for me at the table? It didn't take a genius to figure out this wasn't some innocent mistake. No, this was planned, probably by Lisa. And what stung the most wasn't even her audacity. It was Rachel's silence. From the moment we arrived, she hadn't said a word to defend me. Sure, she looked uncomfortable, maybe even embarrassed, but she hadn't stood up for me. Not once. That hit harder than any of Lisa's passive-aggressive comments ever could. As I sat there, I replayed the scene over and over in my mind. Lisa's smug smile. The way she dismissed me like I was some accessory Rachel had accidentally brought along. "It's more of a girl's thing anyway," she'd said, as if I didn't belong. And the others? Not a single one of them had the decency to speak up. They just sat there, laughing at Lisa's jokes, sipping their overpriced wine, and pretending they hadn't just witnessed something incredibly rude. I watched as the waiter brought out the first course, a plate of something small and fancy that looked more like art than food. Lisa was in her element, commanding the conversation with her usual flair. She was leaning into her role as the queen bee of the group, throwing out stories about her latest vacation and name-dropping people I'd never heard of, but was supposed to be impressed by. Rachel, on the other hand, looked out of place. She laughed at the right moments and nodded along, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It was subtle, but I knew her well enough to see it. She wasn't comfortable. She didn't belong there any more than I did. Eventually, the bartender wandered over, probably sensing I wasn't in the best mood. "Can I get you anything else?" he asked, his tone polite but professional. I shook my head. "I'm good, thanks." But I wasn't good. Not at all. I couldn't stop thinking about how this whole situation made me feel, like I was some sort of outsider in my own marriage. Rachel and I were supposed to be a team. We'd promised each other that. And yet, here I was, sitting on the sidelines while she sat at that table with people who clearly didn't respect me, or her, for that matter. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about me. It was about Rachel too. Lisa's little stunt wasn't just a dig at me. It was a power play. She wanted to remind Rachel, and probably everyone else, that she was in charge. That her opinion mattered more than anyone else's. And Rachel? She let it happen. Maybe not consciously, but by not standing up for me, or herself, she'd given Lisa exactly what she wanted. I took another sip of my drink, trying to calm the storm brewing inside me. I wanted to march over to that table, pull Rachel aside, and demand to know why she hadn't done anything. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. It would just make things worse. So, I waited. The main course came and went. From where I sat, I could hear snippets of the conversation. Lisa was talking about some gala she'd attended, going into great detail about the designer dress she'd worn and the exclusive crowd she'd mingled with. It was all so shallow, so performative. I couldn't help but wonder what Rachel saw in these people. They weren't her equals, not really. Rachel was genuine, kind, and down to earth. She didn't need to prove her worth with designer clothes or exclusive dinner reservations. So why was she trying so hard to fit into their world? By the time dessert rolled around, I'd had enough. I put down my empty glass and made my way back to the table. As I approached, the laughter died down, and all eyes turned to me. "David," Lisa said, her voice dripping with faux surprise. "We were wondering where you'd gone. You missed such a lovely dinner." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "I didn't go anywhere, Lisa. I've been sitting at the bar all night. But thanks for noticing." Her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Well, I hope you enjoyed yourself. It's such a shame we couldn't squeeze you in." I nodded, my gaze steady. "It's funny, isn't it? How there was enough room for 8 people, but not 9. Rachel's face turned red, and she opened her mouth to say something, but I held up a hand. "It's fine. I'm not upset. I just wanted to say goodbye before I left. Rachel, I'll see you at home." And with that, I turned and walked out. As I stepped into the cool night air, I felt a mix of anger and relief. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain: things couldn't stay the way they were. Something had to change. I drove home that night in silence, the tension from the dinner sitting heavily on my chest. I didn't want to explode in front of Rachel when she got home, so I decided to take a walk to clear my head. Fresh air sometimes helped me think, though this time, all it did was make me replay the evening over and over. Lisa's smug face, her condescending tone, the way she said, "It's such a shame we couldn't squeeze you in." It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. She wanted to send a message. I didn't belong. And the worst part? Rachel had just let it happen. When Rachel finally walked through the door later that night, I could tell she was uneasy. She hesitated in the doorway like she wasn't sure whether to approach me or give me space. I decided to let her speak first. "I'm sorry about tonight," she said softly, setting her purse down on the counter. I didn't realize Lisa would pull something like that. I turned to look at her, raising an eyebrow. "You didn't realize? Really? Rachel? This is Lisa we're talking about." Her shoulders slumped. I know she can be difficult, but I didn't think she'd do something so petty. I didn't know what to say without making a scene. I let out a humorless laugh. "A scene? Rachel, she humiliated me in front of everyone. And you were worried about making a scene?" She flinched at my tone, and for a moment, I regretted snapping. But the frustration bubbling inside me was too much to ignore. "Rachel, I'm your husband. We're supposed to have each other's backs, but tonight, I felt like I was on my own. Lisa might have been the one pulling the strings, but you let it happen. Do you realize how that feels?" She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it, clearly at a loss for words. After a long pause, she finally said, "I didn't mean to make you feel like that. I just didn't know how to handle it. Lisa, she's been a part of my life for so long, and sometimes it's easier to just let her win." "Let her win?" I repeated, my voice incredulous. "Rachel, this isn't a game. This is our marriage. If you let people like Lisa walk all over us, it doesn't just hurt me, it hurts us. Do you even see that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she sat down at the kitchen table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I guess I've been so afraid of losing them that I didn't think about what it's costing me. That caught me off guard." "Losing them?" She nodded. "Lisa, the group, all of it. I've known them for so long, and they've always been, well, they've always been there. Even when they're difficult, even when Lisa acts the way she does, they're still a big part of my life. But tonight, I saw it differently. I saw how it affected you, and I realized," she trailed off, looking down at her hands, "I realized that maybe I've been holding on to the wrong things." Her words softened some of my anger, but they didn't erase it. "Rachel," I said, my tone firm but calm, "I get that Lisa's been a part of your life for a long time, but that doesn't give her the right to treat me, or you, like we're less than her. And it doesn't mean you have to keep letting it slide. You're better than that. We're better than that." She looked up at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know," she said quietly. "I'm sorry, David. I really am. I'll talk to Lisa. I'll make it clear that this can't happen again." I nodded, though I wasn't entirely convinced. Words were easy, action was harder. But for now, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. After all, Rachel wasn't the enemy here. Lisa was. And if Rachel was willing to take a stand, maybe we could finally put this whole mess behind us. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lisa wasn't done yet. People like her never were. She thrived on control, on making others feel small, and something told me she wasn't going to let this go without a fight. And I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. So, I waited. I watched. And I prepared myself for whatever came next. Because if Lisa wanted a battle, I was ready. But she wasn't going to drag Rachel, or me, down without a fight. I don't know what it was, but something shifted in me after that conversation with Rachel. Maybe it was the raw honesty in her voice, or maybe it was the way she admitted her fear of losing people who didn't deserve her loyalty. Whatever it was, it made me realize that I needed to stay calm, steady, and focused. If Lisa wanted to play games, I wasn't going to stoop to her level, but I also wasn't going to let her humiliate me again. Rachel said she'd talk to Lisa, but I didn't put much stock in that. Not because I didn't trust Rachel, I did, but because I knew Lisa too well by now. She wasn't the kind of person who backed down easily. She thrived on control, on manipulation, and most of all on attention. And if there was one thing she hated more than anything, it was losing her grip on someone she thought she owned. So, instead of dwelling on what might happen, I decided to observe. I wanted to see how far Lisa would go, how deep her need for control really ran. I wanted to understand her game, not just for my sake, but for Rachel's too. The first real test came a few days later when Rachel mentioned another dinner party. This one wasn't as formal as the last, but Lisa would be there, along with the rest of the group. Rachel seemed nervous when she brought it up, like she was bracing for me to say no. "Do you want to come?" she asked, her voice tentative. "I understand if you don't. After what happened last time." I looked at her for a moment, trying to gauge what she really wanted. Was she asking me to come because she thought it would help, or because she felt guilty? Either way, I could see the hesitation in her eyes. She wanted me there, but she was afraid of what might happen. "Yeah," I said finally. "I'll come." Rachel looked surprised. "You will?" "Of course," I said, giving her a small smile. "I'm not going to let Lisa, or anyone else, make me feel unwelcome. Besides, you're my wife. Where you go, I go." Her face softened, and for the first time in days, she looked genuinely relieved. "Thank you, David. That means a lot to me." The night of the dinner, I decided to approach things differently. I wasn't going to sit back and let Lisa control the narrative this time. Instead, I was going to observe, to watch how she interacted with everyone. Not just me, but the whole group. From the moment we arrived, it was clear that Lisa was in her element. She greeted everyone like she was hosting the event herself, even though the dinner was at another friend's house. Her laughter rang out across the room, loud and deliberate, drawing attention to herself at every opportunity. When Rachel and I walked in, Lisa's eyes lit up, not with warmth, but with something sharper, more calculating. She greeted Rachel with a hug, then turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "David," she said, her tone overly sweet. "So good to see you again. I'm glad you decided to join us." "Thanks for having me," I replied, matching her tone. "It's always a pleasure." The subtle tension between us was almost tangible, but I kept my cool. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten under my skin. As the evening went on, I started to notice little things. The way Lisa would steer the conversation back to herself whenever someone else tried to talk. The way she'd throw in backhanded compliments, like telling Rachel, "You're so lucky David doesn't mind these kinds of events." Most men would hate being dragged along to something so fancy. I also noticed how the others responded to her. Some of them laughed nervously at her jokes, while others avoided eye contact altogether. It was clear that Lisa's dominance wasn't just about me. It was about the entire group. She thrived on their discomfort, on their unwillingness to challenge her. But what stood out the most was Rachel. She was quieter than usual, more reserved. She didn't laugh as much, and when she did, it felt forced. I could see her glancing at me every now and then, as if checking to make sure I was okay. By the time dessert was served, I'd learned everything I needed to know. Lisa wasn't just trying to humiliate me. She was trying to control Rachel too. She wanted to remind Rachel that she was the alpha, the one who called the shots. And in doing so, she was testing Rachel's loyalty. It was a game I'd seen before, but this time, I wasn't going to let her win. I wasn't going to let her manipulate Rachel into choosing between me and her so-called friends. When the night finally ended, Rachel and I walked to the car in silence. Once we were inside, she turned to me, her expression filled with worry. "How was it?" she asked hesitantly. I looked at her for a long moment before answering. "It was enlightening." She frowned. "Enlightening?" I nodded. "Yeah, I saw exactly what Lisa's trying to do. And Rachel, it's not just about me. It's about you too. She wants to control you, to keep you in her orbit. But you don't have to let her. You're stronger than that." Rachel didn't say anything right away, but I could see the gears turning in her mind. For the first time, I felt like she was starting to see things the way I did. And that was a start. As we drove home, I couldn't help but feel a sense of resolve. Lisa might have been playing her games, but I wasn't going to let her win. Not with Rachel. Not with me. Not with us. By the time the next dinner invitation came around, I was ready. I had spent enough time observing, watching Lisa's games unfold, and seeing how Rachel struggled to navigate the delicate balance between her marriage and her long-standing friendships. I decided that this time, things were going to be different. This time, I wouldn't let Lisa's little power plays go unanswered. Rachel brought it up one evening after dinner. She seemed hesitant, like she was walking on eggshells, and I could already guess why. "David," she began, her voice careful, "Lisa and the others are planning another dinner this weekend. It's at the new Italian place downtown. She asked if we'd like to come." I put down my coffee and looked at her. "She asked if we would like to come?" I repeated, emphasizing the we. Rachel nodded. "Yes, she did. I mean, I know how things have been lately, but maybe this is her way of trying to make amends." I raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Lisa? Make amends? Rachel, let's be honest here. That's not her style." She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I know, but maybe if we go, things will be different. I don't want there to be tension anymore." Her words hit me in a way I didn't expect. I realized that Rachel wasn't just trying to appease Lisa. She was trying to protect our relationship from the strain Lisa was putting on it. And while part of me wanted to refuse, to avoid another evening of humiliation, I knew that staying home wasn't the answer. If we were going to move past this, we had to face it together. "All right," I said finally. "We'll go. But if Lisa pulls anything, I'm not going to sit there and take it. Agreed?" Rachel nodded quickly, relief flooding her face. "Agreed. And thank you, David. I really appreciate it." When Saturday night rolled around, I dressed the part. A tailored suit, polished shoes, the works. If Lisa wanted to judge me, I'd give her nothing to work with. Rachel looked stunning in a deep red dress, and as we walked into the restaurant together, I felt a renewed sense of determination. This was my turning point. I wasn't just there to observe anymore. I was there to make it clear that I wouldn't be pushed around. The restaurant was elegant, all soft lighting and marble accents. Lisa and the group were already seated when we arrived, their laughter filling the space. As soon as Lisa saw us, she waved us over with that same too bright smile that always set my teeth on edge. "David, Rachel, so glad you could join us," she said, standing to give Rachel a quick hug. She turned to me with a smirk. "And David, I see you've dressed for the occasion. Very sharp." "Thanks, Lisa," I said evenly. Figured I'd rise to the level of the company I'm keeping. Her smirk faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Well, you've certainly made an effort." We took our seats, and the evening began. At first, things were surprisingly civil. Lisa kept the conversation light, steering clear of her usual digs. I wondered if Rachel had actually gotten through to her, or if she was just waiting for the right moment to strike. It didn't take long to find out. Midway through the second course, Lisa leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine glass as she spoke. "You know, Rachel," she began, her tone casual but pointed, "it's so wonderful that you and David can come to these events. It must be nice for him to experience something a bit upscale." There it was, the first jab of the night, wrapped in a thin layer of civility. I glanced at Rachel, whose cheeks had turned pink, but before she could respond, I decided to take control. "It is nice," I said, keeping my tone light. "But then again, upscale is all about perspective, isn't it? For some people, it's about the food and the atmosphere. For others, it's about how they treat the people around them." The table went quiet for a moment, and Lisa's smile froze in place. "Well," she said after a beat, "I suppose we all have our own definitions." We moved on, but the tension lingered. Lisa's jabs became subtler as the night went on, but each time, I countered them with calm, measured responses. I wasn't rude or confrontational, just firm enough to make it clear that I wasn't the easy target she thought I was. By the time dessert arrived, the balance of power at the table had shifted. Lisa was still trying to maintain her usual dominance, but it wasn't working. The others were less engaged with her and more interested in the conversation Rachel and I were having. For the first time, I felt like we weren't just enduring the evening, we were reclaiming it. As we left the restaurant that night, Rachel squeezed my hand. "You were amazing," she said quietly. "I don't know how you stayed so calm." I shrugged, a small smile playing on my lips. "Because it's not about fighting, Rachel. It's about showing people like Lisa that they don't have as much power as they think they do." Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You're right, and I think she knows it now." I didn't respond, but I couldn't help feeling a sense of satisfaction. Lisa might not have admitted defeat, but I could tell she felt it. This was the turning point I'd been waiting for, and I wasn't about to let her regain the upper hand. Not now. Not ever. The next time Lisa came into my life, she upped the stakes. This wasn't just another dinner or casual gathering. No, this time, she went for the grand gesture, one she thought would solidify her control over Rachel and humiliate me in the process. What she didn't realize was that I'd been waiting for this moment. It all started when Rachel told me Lisa was hosting a special dinner at L'Olivo, one of the most exclusive Italian restaurants in the city. The way Rachel described it, you'd think it was a royal gala. Lisa had apparently gone all out, arranging a private dining room and inviting a hand-picked group of her closest friends. I wasn't surprised when Rachel hesitated to bring it up. "She wants us to come," Rachel said one evening, her voice careful. "Well, she specifically said she wants you to come." I set down my coffee and looked at her, waiting for more. "She said it's her way of making peace," Rachel continued, avoiding my gaze. She thought a small, private dinner might be better than a big group setting. I raised an eyebrow. Lisa wants to make peace? Or Lisa wants to stage another performance? Rachel bit her lip, unsure how to respond. "I don't know, David. Maybe both. But I think it's worth giving her a chance." I could hear the hope in Rachel's voice, and while my gut told me Lisa wasn't done playing games, I agreed. Not because I believed Lisa had suddenly turned over a new leaf, but because I knew it was time to put an end to this once and for all. The night of the dinner, Rachel and I arrived at L'Olivo dressed for the occasion. She wore a sleek navy dress that brought out her eyes, and I had on my best suit, ready for whatever Lisa had planned. The restaurant was as upscale as they came, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers, the kind of place where you didn't see prices on the menu. We walked into the private dining room, and immediately, I knew something was off. Lisa and her friends were already seated at a large table, laughing and chatting like it was their personal playground. Every seat was filled. I scanned the room quickly. There was no chair for me. Not even an empty space where one could have been. Lisa saw us and waved, her smile wide and fake as ever. "David, Rachel, so glad you could make it." I glanced at Rachel, whose face flushed with embarrassment. She opened her mouth to speak, but Lisa beat her to it. "Oh, Rachel, I'm so sorry," Lisa said, her tone syrupy sweet. "I must have miscounted. We only have seats for 8. But don't worry, David can grab a spot at the bar. The cocktails here are divine." Rachel froze, caught between me and her friend, her expression a mix of anger and shame. I stepped forward, keeping my voice calm and even. "No need for the bar, Lisa. I'll take care of it." I turned and walked out of the room before Rachel could say anything, heading straight for the restaurant manager. He greeted me with a polite smile, but that smile widened when I introduced myself. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice filled with recognition. "It's an honor to meet you. How can I assist?" "I own this place," I said plainly. "There's a private party in your dining room that I need you to help me address." His eyes widened slightly, but he nodded. "Of course, sir. What do you need?" I told him what I wanted, and within minutes, the manager and I walked back into the private room. Lisa was mid-sentence, basking in the attention of her friends, when the manager interrupted. "Excuse me," he said, his tone professional yet firm. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. This dining room is reserved for Mr. Thompson and his guests. I'll have to ask your party to vacate the space." The room went silent. All eyes turned to me. Lisa blinked, her confusion quickly morphing into indignation. "What are you talking about? I reserved this room weeks ago." The manager gestured toward me. "Mr. Thompson owns the restaurant. He's graciously offered to cover your bill tonight, but this space belongs to him." Lisa's face turned bright red, and she stammered, You own this place?" I nodded, my expression calm. "Yes, Lisa, I do. And it seems there was indeed a miscount tonight, just not the kind you were expecting." The others at the table looked uncomfortable, exchanging glances as they realized what had happened. Rachel, meanwhile, sat frozen, clearly mortified. "Now, if you'll excuse me," I said, turning to the manager, "please arrange another table for these guests, somewhere more suitable." The manager nodded, ushering Lisa and her group out of the room. As they left, Lisa shot me a look that could have melted steel, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I turned to Rachel, who was still sitting quietly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I'm sorry," she said softly, tears brimming in her eyes. "I didn't know she would do this." I sat down beside her, my voice gentle but firm. "Rachel, I know this is hard for you, but you have to see it for what it is. Lisa doesn't respect you, or us. This wasn't about a miscount. This was about control." She nodded slowly, wiping at her eyes. "You're right. I didn't want to believe it." "I know," I said, reaching for her hand. "But we can't let people like Lisa dictate how we live our lives. You don't need her approval. You never did." Rachel looked at me, her expression filled with something I hadn't seen in a while, determination. "You're right. I'll talk to her. I'll make it clear that this can't continue." For the first time, I felt like we were on the same page. Lisa's games had gone too far, and while I knew she wouldn't give up easily, I also knew that Rachel and I were stronger together. As we finished our evening in the private dining room, just the two of us, I realized that this wasn't just a victory for me. It was a turning point for our marriage. And I wasn't about to let Lisa take that away from us. The fallout from the dinner at Lalivo was a turning point for Rachel and me. The ride home that night was silent, both of us lost in our thoughts. I didn't push her to talk. I knew she needed time to process what had happened. Lisa's stunt had crossed every possible line, and for the first time, Rachel had seen it as clearly as I had. When we got home, Rachel finally broke the silence. She sat on the couch, her shoulders slumped, and looked at me with tears in her eyes. "David," she began softly, "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how much Lisa has been manipulating us." I sat down beside her, giving her the space to speak. She continued, her voice trembling. "I thought she was just being Lisa, you know, a little overbearing, a little bossy. But tonight, I saw it. She wasn't just trying to humiliate you. She was trying to make me choose, to prove that she could still control me." I nodded, letting her words sink in. "Rachel, I've been trying to tell you this, but I didn't want to push too hard. I know how much your friendships mean to you. But Lisa? She doesn't want what's best for you. She wants what's best for her, and she's willing to hurt anyone who stands in her way, even you." Rachel wiped her eyes, her expression shifting from sadness to resolve. "You're right. I see that now. And I'm done letting her do this. I'm done letting her make me feel small, or like I have to earn her approval. I don't need her in my life if it means sacrificing the respect we have for each other." Her words were like a weight lifting off my chest. For so long, I'd felt like I was fighting this battle alone. But now, Rachel was with me. She wasn't just apologizing. She was taking a stand. And for the first time, I truly believed that things could change. The next day, Rachel called Lisa. She didn't tell me exactly what was said, but when she hung up, she looked relieved. "It's done," she said simply. "I told her that her behavior was unacceptable and that I need space. If she can't respect me, or us, then there's no place for her in my life." I could see how hard that conversation had been for Rachel, but I was proud of her. She'd taken control, not just for me, but for herself. And in doing so, she'd set a boundary that Lisa couldn't cross. The weeks that followed felt like a breath of fresh air. Without Lisa's toxic influence hanging over us, Rachel and I grew closer. We started spending more time together, rediscovering the joy that had brought us together in the first place. Our evenings became lighter, filled with laughter and meaningful conversations. It was as if a dark cloud had lifted, allowing us to see each other more clearly than ever. Social events with Rachel's other friends became more enjoyable too. Without Lisa dominating the dynamic, the group felt more relaxed and genuine. People who had once been hesitant to engage with me now opened up, and I found myself actually looking forward to these gatherings. It turned out that not everyone in Rachel's circle shared Lisa's toxic tendencies. They had just been overshadowed by her presence. One night, as we were getting ready for a party, Rachel turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said, adjusting her earrings, "I've been thinking about Lisa a lot lately. Not in a bad way, just reflecting." I raised an eyebrow. Reflecting? She nodded. I used to think she was this larger-than-life figure, someone I needed to impress to feel like I belonged. But now I see that she's just flawed, insecure, maybe. She uses control and manipulation to mask her own fears. And while I don't excuse what she's done, I can't bring myself to hate her. I actually hope she finds her way. Her words surprised me, but they also reminded me why I fell in love with her. Rachel had always been compassionate, even in the face of hurt. You're a better person than most, I said, smiling. But don't forget, you're not responsible for fixing her. She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. I know. She has to figure that out for herself. As we arrived at the party, I couldn't help but notice how different everything felt. The atmosphere was light, the conversations genuine, and for once, there was no underlying tension. Rachel was glowing, her laughter filling the room, and I felt a deep sense of pride knowing she had reclaimed her confidence. Toward the end of the night, one of Rachel's friends approached me. You know, she said, it's been really nice having you around lately. Without certain distractions, it's easier to see how great you and Rachel are together. I smiled, grateful for her words. Thanks. I think we're in a good place now. As we drove home that night, Rachel turned to me with a soft smile. I don't think I've ever been this happy, she said. Not just with us, but with everything. It feels peaceful. I reached for her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. That's because we've found our balance. And no one, not Lisa, not anyone, can take that away from us. And that was the truth. Lisa's absence had been a gift in disguise, forcing us to confront the cracks in our relationship and come out stronger on the other side. While I couldn't say I wished her well with complete sincerity, I hoped she found the peace she needed, somewhere far away from us. For now, Rachel and I were content to enjoy the life we'd built together, free from toxicity and filled with mutual respect. We'd learned an important lesson. Sometimes, the hardest battles aren't the ones we fight against others. They're the ones we fight within ourselves. And together, we'd won. I never expected to see her again. Not here. Not now. Not after all these years. Yet, there she was, Miriam, draped in a gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, her laughter echoing across the ballroom. I recognized that sound. It was the same laughter that once warmed my home, the same voice that whispered promises of forever, before she ripped them apart and walked away without a second thought. And she wasn't alone. Her arm was linked with Sebastian, the so-called elite executive she left me for. He stood tall beside her, his self-satisfied smirk barely concealed behind a crystal flute of champagne. He had the look of a man who thought he had it all: money, status, power. I wondered if he had any idea who I was. For years, Miriam assumed I was nothing. That's why she left. She wanted wealth, prestige, a life of luxury. And when I was struggling to build my business, when I was barely scraping by, she told me point blank, I can't waste my life waiting for you to become someone. So she walked out. She didn't wait to see if I would succeed. She didn't care. To her, I was a failure, and failures didn't deserve her patience. But what Miriam never knew, what she never bothered to stay long enough to witness, was that my failure was temporary, and it became the fuel I needed to rise. And now, here we were. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. She hadn't spotted me yet. I watched as she mingled effortlessly, her practiced smile never faltering, her fingers grazing Sebastian's sleeve every so often like a woman making sure her investment was still intact. Then, her gaze landed on me. Her eyes widened slightly, just for a moment, before her lips curled into a smirk. She tilted her head, whispering something to Sebastian before striding toward me, confidence dripping from every step. Adrian? Her voice was syrupy sweet, but I caught the condescension laced beneath it. I can't believe it. It's been so long. I gave her a small nod, keeping my expression neutral. Miriam. She let out a laugh, feigning delight. Oh my goodness, I wasn't sure it was you at first. What are you doing here? I was invited, I said simply. Her brows lifted slightly. Really? She glanced around, her eyes scanning the room as if trying to gauge whether I was telling the truth. As if a man like me didn't belong in a place like this. Sebastian finally joined us, his grip firm around Miriam's waist as he assessed me with mild disinterest. He extended his hand. Sebastian Carter, CEO of Carter Holdings. I took his hand and shook it, offering a polite nod. Adrian Kingston. Miriam's smirk widened, as though she had just confirmed something in her mind. So, Adrian, what have you been up to these days? There it was. The bait. She wasn't asking out of curiosity. She wanted to hear that I was still struggling, that I was still in the same place she had left me, scraping by, barely making ends meet. I almost laughed, but I let her have her moment. Oh, I said casually, just working. Working. She let out an exaggerated sigh. I figured. You always were a hard worker. What is it that you do now? Sebastian chuckled, swirling his champagne. Let me guess, one of the hotel staff? Or maybe a manager? I let their assumptions hang in the air. Miriam's eyes glowed with amusement. Sebastian, I used to be married to Adrian. Can you believe that? We had, well, let's just say, very humble beginnings. Sebastian raised a brow. You never told me that. She shrugged. It wasn't worth mentioning. It's in the past. I nodded slowly. Yes, it is. Miriam turned her attention back to me, her lips twitching with barely concealed mockery. I'd love to see your workplace. It must be quaint. I held her gaze. You would. She nodded eagerly, linking her arm through Sebastian's. I mean, why not? I'd love to see what you've made of yourself. Sebastian smirked. That could be interesting. I wouldn't mind taking a tour either. I exhaled slowly, letting a small smile touch my lips. A tour? Well, who was I to deny them that? Of course, I said smoothly. I'd be happy to show you around. Miriam practically beamed, certain that she had won whatever twisted game she was playing. She had no idea that this very ballroom, this luxury hotel filled with the city's elite, belonged to me, that I wasn't just an employee. I was the billionaire CEO of Celestia International, one of the most exclusive luxury hotel and spa chains in the world. And tonight, she was about to find out. As I led Miriam and Sebastian toward the elevators, I couldn't help but let my mind drift back to the past, the very past Miriam had been so eager to erase. She had once been my entire world. We met in college, back when my life was dictated by early morning shifts, late-night classes, and the constant struggle to make ends meet. I worked 3 part-time jobs just to afford tuition, barely scraping by while juggling assignments and exhaustion. But through it all, Miriam had been there. Or at least, that's what I had believed. At first, she was patient, supportive, even. She told me she admired my drive, that she loved my ambition. She said she believed in me, that my hard work would pay off someday. But words are easy. It was action that revealed the truth. The more I struggled, the more her patience withered. I still remember the first time she hesitated before introducing me to her friends. The way she avoided mentioning that I worked in a dingy little restaurant, how she winced when I picked her up in my beat-up secondhand car. Her parents disapproved of me from the beginning. He's got nothing to offer you. I once overheard her mother saying, you need a man who can provide, not one chasing some ridiculous pipe dream. Miriam didn't argue. She never did when it came to things that mattered. I ignored the warning signs, convinced that if I just worked harder, if I proved myself, she would stay. But she didn't. I'll never forget the night she ended it. We were in our tiny apartment, the one I had fought so hard to keep. Bills were piling up. My business idea was still in its infancy, and I was barely holding everything together. She sat across from me, arms crossed, her expression cold. This isn't working, she said flatly. I can't do this anymore. I had been exhausted, drained from another 16-hour workday. I blinked at her, trying to process what she was saying. What do you mean? She sighed as if she were talking to a child. I mean, I'm done waiting, Adrian. You said things would get better, but they haven't. You're still stuck in the same place, and I can't waste my life waiting for you to make it when there's no guarantee you ever will. Her words hit harder than any punch ever could. I had sacrificed everything to build a future, and she had already decided I wasn't worth the wait. She left me that night, moving in with Sebastian just weeks later. And I burned. For months, I felt like I had lost everything. I was drowning, suffocating under the weight of my failures. But then something changed. The pain turned into something else, something sharper, more dangerous. It became fuel. Miriam leaving me had been the final push I needed. I poured every ounce of my being into my vision. I studied harder, worked longer hours, built connections. I clawed my way into the industry, starting as a consultant for luxury hotels. I learned everything: how to attract high-end clientele, how to craft an experience so seamless that people would pay thousands just to belong. And then, when I had gathered enough knowledge, I built Celestia International from the ground up. The first resort opened 3 years after Miriam left me. It was an exclusive, members-only retreat, and within months, it became the most sought-after destination for the elite. The business exploded. Investors lined up. New locations opened. 10 years. That's how long it took me to turn my shattered life into an empire. And now? Now, I own the very luxury she had abandoned me to chase. As we stepped into the elevator, Miriam's confident smirk remained in place, but I saw the faint flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "So," she said, leaning into Sebastian, "how long have you been working here?" I suppressed the urge to laugh. "Quite a while," I said smoothly. Sebastian chuckled, adjusting his expensive cufflinks. "Bet you've seen a lot of rich idiots walk through these doors, huh?" "You have no idea," I murmured. Miriam arched a brow. "What exactly do you do here?" I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. "You'll see soon enough." The elevator chimed as we reached the executive floor. The doors slid open, revealing a space that was a world apart from what Miriam had expected. She had imagined a cramped, outdated office, maybe a reception desk, a cubicle at best. Instead, she was met with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, polished marble floors, and an opulent executive lounge filled with individuals in sharp suits and designer attire. Miriam froze. I watched as she tried to process what she was seeing. Sebastian shifted uncomfortably, his earlier amusement faltering. "Wait, why are we here?" I stepped forward, leading them down the hall. "This is my workplace," I said simply. Miriam blinked. "You work up here?" Before I could respond, my assistant, Charlotte, approached. She was poised, professional, every bit the representation of the company's prestige. "Good evening, Mr. Kingston," she said with a polite bow. "Your board meeting has been confirmed for tomorrow, and the finance reports have been sent to your private server. Do you need anything else before your next appointment?" Silence. Miriam's face drained of color. Sebastian's smirk vanished. I turned to face them fully, my voice calm, controlled. "Let me reintroduce myself." I allowed the pause to hang in the air, letting the weight of my next words settle. "Adrian Kingston, CEO of Celestia International." Miriam's lips parted slightly, her breath catching. Sebastian's grip on her arm tightened as panic flickered in his eyes. For years, Miriam had assumed I was beneath her, that I had been left behind, forgotten. But tonight, that illusion had just shattered. Miriam's stunned silence was satisfying, but I wasn't done yet. Sebastian cleared his throat, forcing an uneasy chuckle. "You're the CEO?" His voice lacked the confidence he had exuded earlier. "Yes," I said smoothly, watching his reaction. "Didn't Miriam tell you?" Miriam's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard, her fingers curling into the fabric of her expensive gown. I didn't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Of course, she didn't. She had never looked back. She had never cared to check. As far as she was concerned, I had been nothing when she walked away, and I would always be nothing. But she had been wrong. I gestured toward the expansive office before us. "Welcome to Celestia International, the luxury empire I built from scratch." Sebastian's eyes darted around, taking in the modern decor, the sleek furniture, the artwork on the walls, each piece carefully curated, worth more than the car he had arrived in. His jaw tightened, and I could see it in his expression. He realized he had underestimated me. But this wasn't just about proving my success. This was about the journey, the years of struggle, the relentless drive, the sacrifices that had led me here. I walked toward my office, pushing the glass doors open. Inside, The room was bathed in soft lighting, the massive desk positioned to overlook the city skyline. Behind me, Charlotte followed, professionally poised as always. "Mr. Kingston," she said, "your financial team has sent the latest quarterly reports. The revenue from our newest Dubai resort has exceeded expectations. Shall I have the numbers prepared for your board review?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. Miriam and Sebastian just stared. The woman who once laughed at my dreams, who told me I would never amount to anything, was now standing in the empire I had built, one she had never believed in. I took a seat behind my desk, my fingers drumming lightly on the polished wood. "Would you like a drink?" I asked, my voice calm, measured. "We stock only the finest here." Miriam didn't answer. Sebastian, on the other hand, straightened his posture, trying to regain his composure. "I have to say, Adrian, this is impressive." Impressive. I almost laughed. I had more than just impressive. I had power, influence, control over an industry where people like him wanted a seat at the table. But instead of gloating, I leaned back in my chair. "You said earlier that you wanted to see my shabby workplace," I mused. "Is it what you expected?" Miriam clenched her jaw, but Sebastian forced a laugh. "We were just joking, of course." "Of course," I said, though we both knew he was lying. Miriam finally spoke, her voice hesitant. "Adrian, I raised a hand, stopping her. "Let me tell you something," I said, my tone steady. "When you left, I was nothing. A man with a failing business, drowning in debt, wondering if I'd ever make it. And you? You made sure I knew exactly how worthless you thought I was." She flinched. I continued. "But that's the thing about hitting rock bottom. It forces you to rise. Every insult, every doubt, every moment of struggle, they became my fuel. I built Celestia International not just to prove myself, but because I refused to let people like you decide my worth." The weight of my words hung between us. Sebastian shifted, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, business is business," he said, attempting to sound casual. "It's all about timing, right?" I smirked. "Yes, and mine couldn't have been better. Because I hadn't just built a company. I had built a dominance in the industry. Celestia International was the gold standard of luxury. Every resort, every spa, every high-end location bore my signature of exclusivity. I catered to the elite, the kind of people Sebastian wished he could mingle with. Miriam had traded me for security, and now, standing before me, she realized that the real wealth had been the man she had abandoned. Charlotte stepped forward. "Mr. Kingston, shall I prepare your next meeting?" I glanced at Miriam and Sebastian. "Actually, I have some time. Why don't I give our guests a little more insight into my world?" Miriam hesitated, but Sebastian, his pride clearly wounded, nodded. "Sure. Why not?" I stood, leading them out of my office. As we walked down the executive floor, I gestured toward the surrounding offices. Each of these rooms belongs to a department that runs Celestia International, from marketing to real estate acquisitions to investor relations. Every decision made here shapes an empire worth billions. Sebastian's expression tightened. I continued. "You see, luxury isn't just about wealth. It's about perception. People pay for status, for exclusivity. They don't just buy a hotel stay, they buy an identity. And I made sure Celestia International became the ultimate identity for the elite." Miriam exhaled slowly, as if trying to process just how far I had come. But I wasn't done. We reached a conference room where my top executives were in a meeting. The walls were glass, giving a clear view of the discussion happening inside. A slideshow displayed figures, profits in the hundreds of millions, acquisitions in progress, global expansion plans. Miriam's eyes widened. Sebastian stiffened. I let the moment sink in. "This is what you left behind," I finally said. Miriam turned to me, her lips slightly parted, her confidence crumbling. Sebastian, clearly eager to change the subject, forced another smile. "Well, it's an impressive setup, I'll give you that. But success isn't just about money, right?" I smirked. "True. It's also about who holds the power." Miriam gripped her purse tightly, avoiding my gaze. The realization had hit her. She had traded me for a future that wasn't guaranteed. And now, She was standing in front of the man she had underestimated and lost forever. I glanced at my watch. I have a meeting soon, so I'll have Charlotte escort you both out. But before you leave, I paused, my gaze steady. Enjoy the night. And next time you think of me as just another low-level worker, I smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of my lips. Remember whose name is on the building. The air in the room was heavy, almost suffocating, as Miriam and Sebastian absorbed the weight of the truth. My truth. The reality they never expected. I wasn't the struggling, insignificant man they had envisioned all these years. I wasn't the failure Miriam had abandoned, or the shadow she assumed had faded into obscurity. I was the CEO of Celestia International, the man who had built an empire from the very rubble she left behind. Sebastian, clearly trying to mask his discomfort, forced a tight-lipped smile. Well, Adrian, I have to admit, this is impressive. I chuckled, low and deliberate. Just impressive? Sebastian hesitated, his jaw tightening. I mean, sure, you've done well for yourself. Miriam remained silent, her eyes darting around the room, as if searching for something, anything, to hold on to. But there was nothing. No witty retort. No subtle insult that could diminish what was in front of her. She had lost that power. I leaned back against my desk, watching them. You wanted to see my workplace, I said smoothly. Why don't I give you a proper tour? Miriam's lips parted slightly, but she quickly closed them, nodding instead. Sebastian shrugged. Why not? I gestured for them to follow me as I stepped out of my office. My assistant, Charlotte, was already waiting outside, her expression composed as always. Mr. Kingston, she said, handing me a sleek tablet. The projected revenue from our newest Dubai resort has exceeded expectations. We've also finalized negotiations with the Paris acquisition. Good. Prepare the final contracts for my review, I instructed. She nodded. Right away, sir. Miriam's steps faltered as she glanced between us, no doubt realizing just how far I had come. I led them down the executive hallway, where each office housed the minds that kept Celestia International running at its peak. The walls were lined with glass, giving a clear view of the high-level meetings taking place. Discussions of multi-million-dollar projects, expansions, branding strategies. We stopped by one of the conference rooms, where a digital presentation displayed our latest global acquisitions. I turned to Miriam and Sebastian. This is where we make the real decisions. Every investment, every partnership, it all happens here. Sebastian frowned slightly. Celestia owns this many properties? I smirked. And more. We operate in over 20 countries, with new expansions already in motion. Miriam inhaled sharply. I had no idea. Of course, she didn't. She had never bothered to check. She had assumed I had failed, that I had stayed stagnant, trapped in the same struggles that once defined me. But assumptions had a way of unraveling. I continued walking, leading them toward the VIP guest suites. The hallways were adorned with exquisite artwork, the soft scent of luxury perfumes filling the air. As we reached the penthouse level, I turned to them. This, I said, gesturing towards the double doors ahead, is the Celestia Signature Suite, reserved for only the most exclusive guests. Sebastian scoffed. And what? It's just another overpriced hotel room? I smiled. See for yourself. I pushed the doors open, revealing the epitome of luxury. The suite was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, a private infinity pool shimmering under the soft glow of golden chandeliers, plush velvet sofas, handcrafted wooden tables, a grand fireplace. Every detail meticulously curated for the highest level of comfort. Miriam stepped inside hesitantly, her fingertips grazing the silk curtains. This is incredible, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Sebastian, however, remained near the entrance, arms crossed. How much does a night in here cost? He asked, forcing a smirk. I met his gaze. Starting rate? $15,000 per night? His smirk vanished. Miriam turned to me, eyes wide. 15,000? I nodded. Some guests stay for weeks at a time. She inhaled sharply. That was more than she had ever dreamed of spending on a single hotel stay. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had left because she wanted wealth, luxury, security. And yet, the man she had abandoned was the one who had built an empire around those very things. She could have had this. She could have had all of it. Sebastian's expression was unreadable, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands clenched at his sides. He had assumed he was the successful one, that Miriam had upgraded when she chose him. But standing here, in my world, he realized just how wrong he had been. I let the silence stretch for a moment before speaking. Shall we continue? Miriam swallowed hard, nodding stiffly. We moved through the corridors, passing by private event spaces, a world-class spa, and an exclusive rooftop restaurant with a months-long waiting list. Miriam's posture stiffened with each passing moment, her realization settling deeper with every luxurious detail. She had chosen wrong. I stopped at a private lounge, stepping inside and gesturing for them to take a seat. Have a drink, I offered, pouring myself a glass of scotch. You must be exhausted from the tour. Sebastian waved a hand dismissively. We're fine. Miriam, however, hesitated before reaching for a glass of wine. She needed it, needed something to dull the humiliation. I sipped my drink slowly, watching them. You once told me, Miriam, that I would never be successful, that I wasn't worth waiting for. She flinched at the reminder. I leaned forward slightly. Tell me, do you still believe that? Her fingers tightened around the glass. Sebastian shifted beside her, clearly eager to leave. This was educational, he said, standing abruptly. But we should get going. Miriam didn't move right away. Her lips parted slightly, her gaze lingering on me, as if she wanted to say something. But what could she say? What could she possibly say now that everything she had believed had been shattered? I leaned back in my chair, my expression unreadable. Take your time, I said smoothly. After all, it's not every day you get a glimpse of what you threw away. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Miriam sat frozen in her seat, her fingers still wrapped around the stem of her wine glass. She hadn't taken a sip. I could see it in her eyes, the realization, the slow, agonizing awareness of what she had lost. Sebastian, on the other hand, was unraveling. He adjusted his cufflinks, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. The smug arrogance he had carried all evening was fading, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. Well, he said, clearing his throat, this was interesting. I smirked, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. Was it? Sebastian shot me a sharp look. Yeah, but at the end of the day, success isn't just about money, right? It's about, he hesitated, searching for words, happiness, fulfillment, not just wealth. I chuckled, low and deliberate. That's rich, coming from the man who judged me based on where he thought I worked. His jaw tightened. Miriam finally exhaled, placing her untouched glass on the table. I should have known, she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. Sebastian turned to her sharply. What? She shook her head, dazed. I should have known that Adrian wouldn't stay in the same place. Her eyes flickered toward me, regret evident in every movement. I never imagined this. Her voice was quieter now, almost vulnerable. I didn't respond right away. I wanted her to sit in that realization a little longer, to truly feel it. She had assumed that I had failed. She had assumed that I had remained the struggling man she walked away from. But reality had a way of punishing assumptions. I leaned back, my gaze steady. No, Miriam, you didn't care enough to imagine it. Her lips parted slightly, a flicker of hurt crossing her face. Sebastian scoffed. All right, that's enough. We get it. You've done well for yourself. Congratulations. But don't act like you're some victim. I turned my attention to him, amused. A victim? You act like Miriam ruined your life, Sebastian said, crossing his arms. But from where I'm sitting, it looks like she did you a favor. I let out a slow, dark laugh. A favor? Yeah, he said, leaning forward. If she hadn't left, you might still be nobody. Sometimes rejection makes people work harder. Maybe her leaving was the best thing that ever happened to you. Miriam stiffened beside him. I tilted my head, considering his words. You might be right, I said finally. She did push me to succeed. Sebastian smirked, as if he had won something. But let's not pretend she left as some kind of selfless act to help me grow, I added smoothly. She left because she was impatient. She left because she was greedy. She left because she didn't believe in me. Miriam flinched. Sebastian's smirk faded. And now? I continued, my voice calm but pointed. Now she realizes that she bet on the wrong future. Miriam inhaled sharply. Sebastian's hands clenched into fists. I stood slowly, adjusting my cuffs. You see, Sebastian, the problem with people like you is that you think wealth is just about having money. But true power, true wealth, it's about control, influence. It's about having people underestimate you and then proving them dead wrong. Sebastian's throat bobbed as he swallowed. Miriam was trembling slightly. She had never expected this. Never expected to see me again. Never expected that the man she had dismissed would become someone she could never reach again. I turned to Charlotte, who had been standing quietly by the door. Prepare a car for them, I said. I think they've seen enough for tonight. Of course, Mr. Kingston, Charlotte replied smoothly, immediately stepping away to make the call. Miriam looked like she wanted to say something. Her lips parted slightly, hesitation written all over her face. I waited, but she said nothing. Because what was there to say? Apologies wouldn't change the past. Regret wouldn't rewrite the choices she had made. She had walked away, and now she had to live with that decision. I turned back to Sebastian, who was still glaring at me, clearly itching to salvage his ego. You said earlier that success isn't just about money, I mused. That it's about happiness. Sebastian scoffed. Yeah, and? I smirked. Are you happy? Sebastian's face darkened. Miriam turned to him sharply. Her expression shifted, just slightly, but I caught it. Doubt, suspicion, regret. Sebastian clenched his jaw. We should go, he muttered, grabbing Miriam's hand and yanking her toward the exit. Miriam didn't resist. But as they reached the door, she glanced back at me one last time. Her eyes were full of something she never thought she would feel toward me. Longing, regret. But it was too late. She had made her choice. And I had already moved on. I watched as Miriam and Sebastian disappeared through the doors, Charlotte following closely behind to escort them out. The moment they were gone, the room felt lighter, quieter. I exhaled slowly, setting my drink down on the polished marble bar. Miriam had finally seen what she had thrown away, and it had shaken her to her core. But this wasn't over yet. Miriam had left me because she wanted wealth, security, a life of effortless luxury. She had thought Sebastian was her golden ticket to that world. And now? Now, I was curious to see just how secure their life really was. I walked over to my desk, pressing a button on the intercom. Charlotte, get me everything we have on Sebastian Carter. A slight pause, then her crisp response, right away, Mr. Kingston. I had learned, long ago, that power wasn't just about money. It was about information, knowing the right things at the right time, being 3 steps ahead while everyone else was still playing catch-up. And if there was one thing I knew about men like Sebastian, it was that their arrogance often outweighed their intelligence. I leaned back in my chair, waiting. 15 minutes later, Charlotte returned, a slim tablet in her hand. She placed it on my desk and stepped aside, giving me a knowing look. I think you'll find this interesting. I tapped the screen, scanning through the information. And then, I smiled. Because Sebastian Carter was drowning. His once successful finance firm? Gone. It had declared bankruptcy 6 months ago. His personal assets? Depleted. He had cashed out stocks, maxed out credit lines, and taken desperate loans, all while trying to maintain the illusion of a high-flying executive. Sebastian Carter wasn't a wealthy businessman. He was a man barely holding his life together. And Miriam had left me for this. I almost laughed. It was poetic. She had abandoned me because she didn't want to struggle, because she didn't want uncertainty, because she wanted a shortcut to luxury. And now, she was standing on crumbling ground, and she had no idea. I tapped my fingers against the desk, considering my next move. I could let this play out naturally. sit back and watch as reality slowly crushed them. But where was the fun in that? No. If Sebastian was struggling, I wanted him to feel it. I picked up my phone, dialing a number from memory. A deep voice answered on the second ring. Kingston. Jared. I greeted smoothly. How's my favorite acquisitions expert? Jared laughed. Busy. What do you need? I leaned back in my chair. Carter Holdings. Ever heard of it? A pause. Sebastian Carter's firm? Yeah, they're bleeding money. The vultures are circling. Good, I said, smiling. Buy out whatever's left of his assets. Quietly. I don't want him knowing it's me. Yet? Jared let out a low whistle. You really don't play around, do you? I chuckled. Not when someone needs a reminder of who holds the real power. Consider it done, Jared said. I'll send the reports over by the end of the week. I hung up, satisfaction settling deep in my chest. Sebastian had spent the night mocking me, assuming he was the one on top, assuming I was still some insignificant man scraping by. Now, he was about to lose whatever little he had left. And Miriam? Miriam had no idea that the life she had bet on was built on borrowed time. The next day, I arrived at my office early. Charlotte was already there, as efficient as ever. Mr. Kingston, she greeted. The financial reports on Carter Holdings are in your inbox. And she hesitated slightly. You might find this interesting, Miriam Carter called this morning. I arched a brow. Oh. Charlotte nodded. She requested a meeting. Now that was unexpected. Miriam, coming to me? I leaned back, curiosity sparking. Did she say why? No, Charlotte said, but she sounded urgent. I smirked. Desperation has a way of making people humble, doesn't it? Charlotte's lips twitched in amusement. Shall I schedule a meeting? I considered it for a moment. Miriam had already lost the upper hand. She had already seen just how far I had risen. Now, she was coming to me, and I wanted to know why. Schedule it for tomorrow, I said finally. Let her wait a little. Charlotte nodded. Of course, Mr. Kingston. As she left, I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair. Miriam was reaching out, and that meant only one thing. She knew. Maybe she had finally seen through Sebastian's lies. Maybe she had realized that the man she left me for wasn't the powerful, secure provider she had thought he was. Or maybe she just wanted a way back into my world. I smiled to myself. Whatever the reason, whatever she thought she was coming here for, she was about to learn something else. I was no longer the man she could walk away from. She had made her choice. And now, she had to live with it. The next day, I arrived at my office earlier than usual. The skyline stretched before me through the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathed in golden morning light. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the warmth settle as I anticipated what was to come. Miriam was coming to see me. It had been years since she walked out of my life without looking back, certain that I would never amount to anything. But today, she had reached out, and I knew exactly why. She had discovered the truth about Sebastian. I had seen it in her eyes last night, the flicker of doubt, the unspoken fear. The moment she realized that the man she had abandoned had built a kingdom, while the one she chose was nothing more than a crumbling illusion. Now, she was coming here, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Charlotte stepped in, her expression as composed as ever. Mr. Kingston, Mrs. Carter has arrived. Shall I send her in? I smirked. Mrs. Carter. How ironic. Yes, send her in. Charlotte nodded and stepped aside, allowing Miriam to enter. She walked in slowly, her posture stiff, her gaze flickering around my office. She was taking it all in. The luxurious leather chairs, the mahogany desk, the sheer dominance of the space. It was a stark contrast to the last time she had seen me, struggling in our tiny, run-down apartment. She looked different now. Older, yes, but also weary. This wasn't the woman who once laughed at my ambitions, who sneered at my dreams and called them childish. No, this was a woman who had been humbled. I gestured toward the chair across from me. Have a seat, Miriam. She hesitated, then lowered herself into the chair. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, something she never used to do. For the first time in my life, Miriam was nervous around me. To what do I owe this surprise visit? I asked smoothly, leaning back in my chair. She swallowed, her lips parting slightly before she spoke. I wanted to talk. I raised a brow. Talk? She nodded, looking down at her hands. About last night. About everything. I took my time, watching her. Last night was illuminating, wasn't it? Her jaw tightened slightly. Yes. I tilted my head. What part? She exhaled, closing her eyes for a brief moment before looking at me again. You. Everything you've accomplished. I smiled faintly. Not what you expected, was it? She hesitated. No. There it was. The confession. The admittance that she had underestimated me. That she had made the wrong choice. I let the silence stretch, forcing her to sit in it. Finally, she spoke again. Adrian, she hesitated, then sighed. I made a mistake. I arched a brow. Which one? Her eyes flickered with something close to pain. Leaving you. I stared at her for a long moment, absorbing those words. If she had said this years ago, maybe it would have mattered. Maybe it would have been enough to wound me, to reopen old scars. But now, it meant nothing. I set my coffee down with a quiet clink. You made a choice, Miriam, I said calmly. You walked away when I needed you the most. And now, suddenly, you regret it? She winced. I interrupted, leaning forward slightly. Do you regret that I proved you wrong? She inhaled sharply, her hands clenching. That's not fair. I smirked. Isn't it? Her lips parted, but no words came out. Because she knew I was right. She had left because she thought I would fail. Because she didn't believe in me. And now, faced with everything I had built, she realized just how blind she had been. She straightened slightly, as if trying to reclaim some dignity. Adrian, I didn't come here to fight. I came here because She trailed off, but I already knew what she was about to say. She wanted something. Miriam had always been good at manipulating situations to her advantage. And if she was here, it was because she thought there was still a way back in. I decided to cut to the chase. You're here because you finally saw the truth about Sebastian, aren't you? Her breath caught, her eyes widening slightly. I chuckled, shaking my head. I know everything, Miriam. Her hands clenched in her lap. He's broke, I continued, my tone matter of fact. His firm collapsed months ago. He's been pretending, lying to you. You left me for a man who's barely holding his life together. She flinched as if I had struck her. I leaned back, enjoying the slow unraveling. Tell me, I said, how did you find out? Did he finally admit it? Or did you start noticing the cracks? The late nights, the secret phone calls, the sudden tension whenever money came up? Her shoulders slumped slightly. I started noticing things, she admitted. At first, it was small. He became distant, distracted. Then I realized he wasn't taking calls in front of me anymore. Bills started piling up. He told me it was just a rough patch. I smirked. And you believed him? She exhaled shakily. I wanted to. But last night changed everything, I murmured. She nodded. Seeing you, seeing this. She gestured around my office, her voice raw. It made me realize how blind I was. Silence stretched between us. And then, she finally asked the question I had been expecting. Adrian, she said quietly, is there any way we could try again? I let the words hang in the air, letting her feel the weight of them. Miriam Carter, the woman who once walked away from me without a second thought, was now sitting in front of me, asking for another chance. I inhaled slowly, then exhaled, and I smiled. Not out of happiness, out of pure satisfaction. Because Miriam was about to learn the most cruel twist of fate. She had left me for a man she thought was better. And now, she wanted to come back. But the thing about choices? You don't always get to undo them. Miriam's voice trembled slightly as she asked the question. Is there any way we could try again? I stared at her, letting the words settle in the air. The woman who had once mocked me, who had left me in my darkest moment, now sat across from me, asking for another chance. She had left because she thought I was going nowhere. She had chosen a man she thought was better. And now? Now, she wanted back in. I exhaled slowly, leaning forward. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice calm. You walked away from me when I had nothing. You married another man because he could give you the life you wanted. And now that you've realized that life was built on lies and borrowed money, you're sitting here, asking me if we can try again? Miriam flinched, her fingers twisting together in her lap. I didn't know, she murmured. I didn't know he was lying. I didn't know he was. Of course you didn't know, I cut in smoothly, because you never cared about the truth. You only cared about what looked like success. And now that the illusion is gone, you're scrambling for a backup plan. She inhaled sharply, blinking rapidly. That's not fair. I chuckled, shaking my head. Not fair. She winced. Tell me, Miriam, I said, my voice softer now, almost mocking. If I were still the same man you left years ago, if I were still struggling, would you be sitting here? Silence. She couldn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. She only wanted me now because I had one. Because I had become everything she thought I never would. And that was the most satisfying part of all. I stood up, walking around my desk until I was right in front of her. Do you know what the best part of this is, Miriam? I asked, my voice deceptively calm. She looked up at me, her eyes uncertain. What? I smiled. I don't want you back. Her breath caught. I saw it. The exact moment reality hit her. The moment she realized that she had lost me forever. She had spent all these years assuming I was beneath her, assuming I had failed, assuming I had been waiting for the day she might return. But I hadn't. I had moved on. I had built something so beyond her reach that even now, sitting in front of me, she wasn't worthy of stepping back into my world. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her hands gripping the arms of the chair. Adrian, please, she whispered, her voice raw. I shook my head, cutting her off. No, Miriam. She swallowed hard, her face paling. You made your choice, I continued, my voice as sharp as a blade. And now, you have to live with it. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No pity, no sympathy, just satisfaction. Because this was justice. I straightened, walking back to my desk. Charlotte, I called out, my voice steady. The door opened almost immediately. Charlotte stepped inside, her usual composed expression unwavering. Yes, Mr. Kingston? Mrs. Carter was just leaving, I said simply. Miriam's lips parted. Adrian, wait. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. She had already lost. Charlotte gave a polite nod. This way, Mrs. Carter. Miriam hesitated for only a moment before rising slowly to her feet. I could feel her looking at me, waiting, hoping for something. But there was nothing left to say. She had walked away once, and I had made sure she could never walk back. She turned and left the office, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. As the door shut behind her, I exhaled slowly, running a hand over my jaw. That was it. That was the end of Miriam Carter. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smirk forming on my lips. The ultimate revenge wasn't wealth. It wasn't power. It wasn't success. It was knowing that the person who once belittled you, betrayed you, abandoned you, was now the one begging to be in your life again. And knowing that they could never have that chance. The moment the door shut behind Miriam, silence filled the room. I sat there, staring at the space she had just occupied, but I felt nothing. No lingering regret, no what-ifs, no unresolved emotions. Just satisfaction. She had walked out of my life all those years ago, never looking back. And today, she had returned, not out of love, not out of some long-lost attachment, but out of desperation. Because I had one, and she had lost everything. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my jaw as I replayed the last few moments in my mind. The way her voice had trembled, the way she had struggled to form her words, the way she had realized too late that she had chosen the wrong path. It was poetic. I had spent years pushing forward, grinding, building an empire out of nothing. She had spent those same years chasing an illusion, believing she had secured a future that would always provide for her. Now, her foundation had crumbled, and I had been the one standing at the top, watching as it all collapsed beneath her feet. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Charlotte stepped in, her expression as unreadable as ever. "Mrs. Carter has left the building," she informed me. "Good," I said simply. She nodded, but didn't leave immediately. Instead, she hesitated, something she rarely did. "I took the liberty of digging deeper into Sebastian Carter's current financial situation," she said. "There's more you might find interesting." I arched a brow. "Go on." Charlotte walked forward, placing a sleek folder on my desk. "It turns out, his debts are worse than we originally thought. He's been hiding his financial troubles not just from Miriam, but from his business partners as well. His company is crumbling, and with the recent acquisition of his remaining assets." She met my gaze, a hint of amusement flickering in her eyes. "You now own everything he had left." I picked up the folder, flipping through the documents. Properties, investments, partnerships. Everything Sebastian Carter had built was now mine, and he had no idea. Yet, I smirked, tossing the folder onto my desk. "Set up a meeting with him," I said. Charlotte's lips twitched slightly. "Of course, Mr. Kingston." She turned to leave, but I called out, "Oh, and Charlotte?" She paused. "Yes?" "Make sure it's at one of my hotels," I said, my voice laced with amusement. "Let's make it a comfortable setting for him." Charlotte nodded, her expression betraying a hint of amusement. "Consider it done." 2 days later, I sat in the private lounge of Celestia International's flagship hotel, sipping on a glass of whiskey as I waited. Sebastian had arrived 20 minutes ago. Charlotte had led him to the lounge, offering him a drink, making polite conversation. He had no idea what was coming. I watched him through the glass window separating the two rooms. He sat there, legs crossed, a faint smirk on his lips, as if he still believed he had some form of control. It was almost sad. Almost. I stood, adjusting the cuffs of my suit before stepping into the lounge. Sebastian looked up, his smirk widening. "Kingston," he greeted, his tone casual. "Didn't expect you'd actually want to meet in person." I took a seat across from him, my expression unreadable. "Sebastian." He leaned back, swirling the drink in his glass. "I have to admit, you've done well for yourself. Quite the upgrade from where you were a few years ago." I smirked. "And quite the downgrade for you, I hear." His jaw tightened slightly, but he forced another chuckle. "I won't lie, things have been rough. Business cycles, you know how it is. But it's temporary." I tilted my head. "Is it?" He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I leaned forward, placing my glass on the table. "Sebastian, let me save you some time. Your company is dead. Your finances are in ruins. You've been pretending, scraping by, hiding from the inevitable." I paused, letting my words sink in before delivering the final blow. "And as of 2 days ago, I own everything you had left." The color drained from his face. He stared at me, his glass hovering midair before he slowly set it down. "You're lying," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. I pulled out the folder Charlotte had given me and slid it across the table. "Go ahead. Take a look." He hesitated before reaching for it. The moment he opened it, his expression shattered. His hands trembled slightly as he flipped through page after page. Legal documents, transaction records, signed agreements. Everything was gone. Everything was mine. He inhaled sharply, his fingers gripping the edge of the folder. "You," he swallowed. "You planned this." I smiled. "No, Sebastian. You planned this when you built your entire life on borrowed money and arrogance." His breathing quickened, his jaw tightening. "You bastard," he hissed. I chuckled. Now, is that any way to speak to your new landlord?" His head snapped up. "What?" I leaned back, enjoying every second of this. "That penthouse you and Miriam have been living in? That company office you still pretend to run? That car you drive?" I spread my arms. "All mine now." Sebastian's hands clenched into fists. "You can't." "I already have," I interrupted smoothly. Silence stretched between us. Sebastian's breathing was uneven now, his entire body stiff with barely contained rage. I let the moment linger before standing. "I wanted you to be the first to know," I said casually. "After all, it's only fair." You spent years thinking you were above me. And now? Now you're nothing. Sebastian pushed back his chair suddenly, standing so fast that his glass nearly tipped over. His face was flushed with humiliation and fury. You think this is over? He growled. I smirked. Oh, Sebastian. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. This was never a fight. It was a lesson. His jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might break a tooth. I straightened, adjusting my suit. Enjoy the rest of your evening, I said lightly. I imagine it'll be your last one in my penthouse. And with that, I walked out, leaving Sebastian Carter to drown in his own downfall. As I stepped out of the lounge, I didn't bother looking back. There was nothing left to see. Sebastian Carter, the man who once held his nose high, the man who believed he had everything, was now standing in the ruins of his own arrogance. He had mocked me, dismissed me, taken the woman who was supposed to stand by my side. And now? Now, he had lost everything. His fortune, his business, his home. And soon, Miriam. I walked through the sleek marble corridors of the hotel, my shoes clicking against the polished floors. Charlotte was already waiting by the elevator, holding a folder in her hands. Did he take the news well? She asked, amusement lacing her voice. I smirked. Not at all. She handed me the folder. The final paperwork. Sebastian and Miriam have 30 days to vacate the penthouse. After that, they're officially out of your properties. I flipped through the documents, nodding in approval. It was done. The final blow had landed. Charlotte hesitated for a moment before speaking again. There's something else. I glanced up. What? She pressed her lips together, as if debating whether to say it. Then, finally, she said, Miriam is outside. She's waiting in the lobby. I exhaled slowly, but I wasn't surprised. Of course, she was. Miriam had always been resilient in her own way. Even now, after everything that had happened, she wasn't ready to let go. Charlotte gave me a knowing look. Do you want me to send her away? I considered it. I had nothing left to say to Miriam. I had given her my answer the last time we spoke. There was no going back. But still, I wanted to see what she would say. What excuse she would come up with now that her world had collapsed. I slipped the folder under my arm, sent her up to the rooftop lounge. Charlotte gave a slight nod. Understood. I leaned against the glass railing, staring out at the city skyline. The rooftop lounge was private, exclusive to only a select few guests. It was quiet here, the air crisp as the evening lights flickered below. I heard the elevator doors open behind me, followed by hesitant footsteps. Then, her voice. Adrian. I didn't turn around right away. I took a slow sip of my whiskey before finally facing her. Miriam stood there, wrapped in an elegant coat, her expression a mixture of nerves and desperation. She looked tired, like a woman who had been running toward something that no longer existed. Nice view, isn't it? I said casually, turning back toward the city. She stepped forward hesitantly. I didn't know where else to go. I smirked, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. You're not here because you don't have anywhere else to go, Miriam. You're here because you don't have anyone else to turn to. She flinched, but she didn't deny it. I sighed, setting my drink down. What do you want? She inhaled shakily. I don't know, she admitted. I just needed to see you. I let the silence stretch between us before speaking. You saw me, Miriam. You saw what I became. You saw the life I built, the one you thought I'd never have. Her lips trembled. I was wrong. I chuckled, shaking my head. That's an understatement. She swallowed. I know I hurt you. I exhaled slowly. Miriam, do you even remember the last thing you said to me when you left? She paled slightly. I gave her a cold smile. I do. You said, I can't waste my life waiting for you to become someone. Her breath hitched. I took a step closer, my voice quieter now, but no less sharp. And now, you want to come back because I became someone. She looked away, ashamed. You don't love me, Miriam, I continued. You love what I have. You love the security, the success. You love the idea of being beside me now that I'm at the top. Tears welled in her eyes. That's not true. Isn't it? I challenged. She exhaled shakily. I did love you, Adrian. I swear I did. I studied her, searching for sincerity. And maybe once, it had been true. Maybe in the beginning, she had loved me. But love that vanishes when times get hard? That isn't love at all. I shook my head. Even if that were true, it doesn't matter anymore. She bit her lip, struggling to hold back her emotions. You really won't give me another chance? I tilted my head, studying her for a long moment. And then, I said the only thing that mattered. I already moved on. Her breath caught. I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. The truth was there, hanging between us, undeniable and final. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold herself together. I understand, she whispered. And for the first time, I believed her, because she had no other choice. She had lost. And I had won in every possible way. I turned back toward the city, my hands resting on the railing. Goodbye, Miriam. I heard her inhale sharply, but she didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just stood there for a moment longer, then finally turned and walked away. The elevator doors closed behind her, leaving nothing but the quiet hum of the night. I took another sip of my drink, letting the moment settle. This was it, the final chapter of a story that had once defined me. I had built an empire from the ashes of my past. I had proven everyone wrong. And most importantly, I had freed myself. As the city lights flickered below, I smiled to myself, because for the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. I was only looking forward, and it felt damn good.